I think the culture of pre-release singles in K-pop has justified slower release cadences at an industry level. Where an active group in the third generation might have released maybe 3 to 4 projects a year, in the fourth generation we've now averaged to around 1 to 2 projects a year, and the loss of content is seemingly made up for with more dynamic releases. Now more content is going into any given release, we're more accustomed to seeing additional music videos, performance videos, variety content, and so on. Before I started a KTube channel, I often held discussions about K-pop with myself in my notes app, just writing down my thoughts on things going on in the world of K-pop when I didn't have anyone else to talk to, which sounds kind of sad now that I'm saying it out loud. But one of those things that I did write down was the question about whether or not K-pop groups can have comebacks too frequently. Can a group that releases music too often impair the relationship they have with their fans and the general public? I guess the actual question here is, can a group oversaturate themselves with too much content? I believe this question is a pretty complex one, and one that has changed a lot since our venture into the fourth generation. I first wrote this question down, I think in 2018, in regards to Twice, where a huge talking point about Twice during that time was that they oversaturated themselves by having too many comebacks. I went back and counted, from 2017 to 2018, Twice released 13 separate musical projects. The majority of these were full project releases, with a handful being digital singles and album repackages. That's a lot, obviously, especially for more involved onces who engage with K-pop by buying every release of their favorite group, and even more so for onces who engage with K-pop by collecting everything down to the photo cards and season's greetings. That's easily thousands of dollars between all of those releases. For those types of fans, the collectors, I don't doubt that the 2017-2018 period of Twice's career was damaging for them in some ways. This to me is the real nature of, quote, oversaturation, if it exists at all in a world like K-pop. If a dedicated fan becomes overwhelmed with too much content monetarily speaking, that of course is going to put a strain on the relationship that they have with the group. Not all fans are like this though. I would say the majority of K-pop fans are not completionist collectors and wouldn't be monetarily burdened too much by this frequent comeback cadence, although 13 separate releases in under 2 years is still quite an investment to most people, even if you're just buying one version of each release. As I said in the beginning of this video though, this was 2018, and the landscape of K-pop is remarkably different 6 years later. K-pop is still pretty much well known for artists having frequent comebacks compared to the rest of the world, but the number of comebacks per group on average has seemingly decreased over the years. While the usual number of full-scale Korean comebacks is, on average, I would say about 2 times a year in the current generation, the extreme from generations gone by seem to be about 4 comebacks in a single year. That would mean a full-scale Korean comeback every 3 months, which is insane. And when I say full-scale, I mean a release that of course includes a music video, title track with accompanying performance, and variety content promotions. Many K-pop groups have managed to do 4 of these a year, including ATEEZ, I just mentioned Twice, Red Velvet, Stray Kids, Mamamoo, and surprisingly, many more groups. Despite how labor-intensive this must be, having 4 comebacks a year was not uncommon in the world of K-pop, although it is becoming more and more rare as the years go by, so this conversation about oversaturation is shifting a lot when we consider the past 2 to 3 years in K-pop. Nowadays, groups tend to release multiple singles from the same album and promote them separately, but all of that still falls technically underneath a single project release and promotional period. NewJeans, for example, technically promoted 6 singles in 2023. They had the OMG digital single in January, followed by 5 singles from the Get Up album in July and August. Every single they released had an accompanying music video and were promoted on music shows, but the 5 Get Up singles were technically promoted under just 1 release period, so while there were 6 separate singles, they were divided among only 2 comeback periods. The advent of pre-release singles and just additional singles in general in K-pop has seen a pretty big boom universally, and for the most part, this has seemingly taken the place of more frequent and separate releases in K-pop. The oversaturation problem, as I saw it in 2018, has kind of solved itself in this way. I mean, I guess an argument can be made that oversaturation can still occur even with this kind of release model. NewJeans releasing 5 singles in less than 2 months may have been too much for people. And while all of it was a part of promotion for just one album, perhaps an argument can be made that a burst of singles over a couple of weeks can be just as risky as the same amount of releases spaced throughout a whole year. The counter to this problem is the other aspect of the release cadence model for the fourth generation. NewJeans released Get Up in July of 2023, and as of 8 months later, we still have yet to see another comeback from them. The tactic for the new generation seems to be front-loading a lot of content all at one time and then disappearing for a while to build up anticipation for the next release after an extended waiting time than what was historically normal for K-pop. But this then brings up another question to me about whether or not the fourth generation release model is more desirable than what it has been in the past. K-pop groups tend to be more sparse in their releases these days, again aiming for what seems to be around 1 to 2 comebacks a year. What's lost in the form of separate projects usually comes in the form of pre-release or B-side singles. I've debuted with pretty frequent comebacks, but all 3 of them were digital singles. In the first year of IVE's career, they ended up releasing only 6 songs in total, which is the equivalent to 1 mini-album for any given K-pop artist. LE SSERAFIM debuted with a mini-album, released another one 5 months later, and then released a, quote, full album at the cusp of their 1-year anniversary. I wouldn't call Unforgiven a full album personally when you remove the re-recorded tracks. In my eyes, it's their 3rd mini-album. So, LE SSERAFIM did just barely manage 3 comebacks in a year at their debut, but now they do seem to be on track to the 2 comebacks a year model. We're approaching 1 year since Unforgiven in May, and they've only released 1 mini-album since that point, which was easy. And other groups I keep up with operate in a pretty similar way. aespa and NewJeans seem to be going back and forth between 1 and 2 comebacks a year, so most, but certainly not all, K-pop groups in the 4th generation have adopted a similar model. And that's not just for 4th generation groups. Even TWICE are now averaging just 1 project a year at this point, yet have also incorporated pre-release singles into most of their recent projects. This is seemingly becoming an industry standard. It seems that pushing the limits of the amount of comebacks in a single year isn't as desirable, rather than putting more focus into promoting 1 or 2 solid projects a year, which certainly is less of a burden on the groups themselves. It's way less of a workload, I'm sure. So going back to the original problem about oversaturation, this release cadence model certainly provides more, quote, waiting time in between releases that allows straggling fans more time to get on the train. So I think this problem has kind of solved itself, kind of. The only downside I can see to this is that if an artist releases a project that any given fan doesn't resonate with, it may damage the relationship if the fan recognizes that they have to wait another 6 months to a whole year before they get another project from the artist. This is obviously first world problems in the world of music, and us K-pop fans tend to have it the best, considering some Western artists wait on average 3 years in between album releases. And I would also say that the advent of additional singles per album provides multiple avenues for K-pop fans to connect with different tracks on the album, just in case fans don't resonate as much with the intended title track. So when at first writing this question down in 2018 in my notes app, I think in retrospect, this problem has solved itself over time. The K-pop marketplace produces less projects on average and avoids oversaturation in this way, but tends to fill those releases with more content than ever before, including pre-release singles, B-side music videos, performance videos, and so on. There are some downsides to this release model, of course, but I think this is the better model overall personally, despite it being less content in the end for us K-pop fans to consume, but that is also the beauty of being a multi-stan. There really is never a dull week in K-pop, for better or for worse, my gosh. Yeah, I think that's all that I have to say. I believe the answer used to be a very conditional yes to oversaturation, as groups releasing a project every 3 to 4 months seemingly had a likelihood of alienating fans who were on the fence, but obviously that likelihood of oversaturation, I would say, depended on the type of fan who was engaging with the music in the first place. Several other attributes, such as music taste and bias, influenced the decision to get behind a group just as much as the amount of content, in my opinion. To me, that still stays true to this day in the current generation, but it's not as pressing of a problem, as groups are tending to pull away from extreme release cadences these days, and for whatever problems arise with that, K-pop companies, on average, seem to be adapting somewhat well to these problems. On average. Yeah, I think that's what I think about this question, and now I can delete this conversation off my notes app. Let me know what you think, definitely. Do you still think that groups can oversaturate themselves with too many releases or with too much content? If so, how or why do you think so? Also, if you have any opinions regarding pre-releases as well, I know that can sometimes be a pretty contentious issue by itself, that sometimes a pre-release might hinder the actual release itself, but I don't know. Yeah, let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you next time.